Thank you for joining us. Today I'm joined by the Chief Executive of Enfield Citizens Advice, Citizens Advice Enfield, Jill Harrison, who we're going to have a chat about the service that is provided by her organisation, how she got involved in it in the first place, and obviously I will incorporate any questions that the audience want to send me. If you do want to do that, then please use the GlobalNet 21 web link to do so that we can see them all as they come in. Thank you very much. Jill, good morning.
Morning, Julia.
Hi. Do you want to start off by telling us how you got involved in the advice sector, and obviously with citizens advice in particular?
Yes, of course. When I left college, I initially went to work in the civil service in what was then called the DHSS, and then I managed a housing benefit team for a couple of years. And I really wanted to help people get social justice, so I decided to move to the advice sector. And I was very fortunate to get a role at what was then Palmer's Green Citizens Advice Bureau, where I trained in advice, and I stayed there for a very happy couple of years. And then I went off to work in national charities around carers and disability issues. And about 9 years ago, I saw a job advertised for Chief Executive of Harrow Citizens Advice. And Harrow was the area I grew up in as a child. So I thought, well, that would be really interesting. And I absolutely loved the role. I was there for about 4.5 years. And the only thing I didn't like about it was a very long commute to Harrow from Southgate, where I've lived for many years. So when the Enfield job came up 5 years ago, I thought, the job I love, but in actual fact, I can just get there on a short bus ride. So that was me sold on the job, and I've been here ever since. So 5 years now.
Fantastic. So, what does a typical day look like for you when you're working?
So, as Chief Executive, the responsibilities are mainly around finance and fundraising. So I might be drafting a funding bid. There's also a lot of work to be done in reporting to our existing funders, so an awful lot of report writing. Then there's a sort of strategic element, so writing our business plans and so forth. And really basically doing all the backroom stuff that enables the Citizens Advice Service to do what it does best, which is advising people and helping them to sort out their problems. So some of it will be around staff management, and a lot of it's about external relations as well, so going to meetings with key stakeholders like the council. So my day is very different from the day of an advice worker, because they're obviously in the sort of front line of trying to help people deal with their problems, but my work enables their work to go on.
Sure. So one of the things I was really interested to learn about CABs in general is I think a lot of people sort of think that it's just one big organisation, but that's not the case, is it? No. How is it structured?
So each Citizens Advice is a local charity in its own right. So we as Enfield Citizens Advice are a local charity. Each Citizens Advice is a separate charity in its own right, and there are about 325 of us now across the country who are each local charities, and we are part of, if you like, a wider family of Citizens Advice. And there's a head office up in central London which helps us to achieve quality standards, keeps an eye on us to make sure that we're providing a good quality service. And there are even some Citizens Advice services across the world, so Australia, New Zealand, for example, and also in South Africa. So it's an international service as well.
I did not know that. And do you get the chance maybe to sort of do exchange visits?
Funny you should say that, but I did have the Chief Executive of Citizens Advice Australia come to visit me about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And that was really interesting, because although we were separated by obviously thousands of miles, the issues were almost identical. You know, the concerns that we shared about running the service, raising money for it, were pretty much the same. She just said it's a bit warmer where she is.
That's true. Sometimes a bit too warm, I think. What's your favourite thing about your job? We will talk more about this, the service and the advisor role in a bit. What's your favourite part about your role, apart from the opportunity possibly one day to go to Australia?
The favourite part of my day is when one of the advisors or the volunteers comes in and tells me about a success they've had. So they'll pop their head around the door and say, "Oh, you'll never guess what, I won that appeal," or, somebody's got thousands of pounds worth of backdating. I mean, that absolutely makes my day. Although I'm a chief exec now, I'm an advisor at heart, and it's those kind of things that make me think, yeah, this is why we do this job. When somebody's been treated really badly and we've won their case for them, that's what makes the job really worthwhile.
Fabulous. And is there anything that frustrates you about the role that you do, possibly in terms of not being able to get more involved in the advice side, but what is it that you don't like so much?
The thing I don't like is the constant search for money just to keep the service running. It would be so much easier if all the money was guaranteed every year, but I have to raise about £400,000 a year in charitable trust funding and individual donations just to keep the service as it is, and that can be a little bit frustrating. And also I think the fact that most people don't realise we're a charity, so we get that an awful lot, that people think that it's part of the government service. And in the old days, the Citizens Advice Service started in 1939 at the outbreak of World War II. It was very much a entirely government funded service, but that hasn't been the case for many years. And it's one of the reasons why I like to do interviews like this, to really explain to people that it is a charity like other charities.
Yeah, and why is it so important? Because I know in recent years you've been trying to sort of diversify that funding and find different sources of funding. And why has that been such a focus in the last, since you joined, I guess?
Yeah, it's really because increasingly the kind of core money from local councils that all citizens advice bureaus relied on across the country is becoming harder to obtain, and we understand why, because obviously there are huge challenges and pressures on local government funding. We understand that, but it means that we're having to go out increasingly and ask for individual donations, which we never used to do. And in Enfield, we've been quite innovative. We've set up the first 2 charity shops of any Citizens Advice service on the UK mainland. There is a small shop in the Channel Islands in Guernsey, so we weren't entirely the first, but it's the first on the UK mainland. And that's been really quite exciting and a huge challenge, an interesting challenge for me, because although I obviously worked in a shop when I was 15, 16, I had a Saturday job, running a retail empire was not exactly what I came into the charity sector for, but it is really important. It's another way of generating additional income, also to give people different volunteering opportunities. So we welcome volunteers in our shops, and it's a way of people, if they can't donate money, all of us have got things in our wardrobe that we don't wear anymore, little bits of bric-a-brac, vases and so forth that suited our house 20 years ago but don't now, and it gives people an opportunity to donate in a different way if they'd like to.
Yeah, so both the shops are in Palmer's Green, is that right?
Yes, that's right. One of them is just south of the North Circular in the Bowes Park area, and the other one that we just opened before Christmas is just about opposite the Fox Pub in central Palmer's Green.
And I think from what I understand, we had some quite good support from I suppose the council, the individual councillors, and I think. Did you have a celebrity or a political celebrity, I guess, opening the second one? Is that
yes,
right?
Van Boss, the local MP for Southgate and Palmer's Green, came and cut the ribbon for us on the 1st of December and cut the cake, which was absolutely lovely. But yeah, we've been really amazed by the generosity of local people in giving us their donated goods, and it's so far, touch wood, it's all going well, and we hope to make a small amount of money this year, and all of that will be invested in providing frontline advice services to local people in need. And that's why we're perhaps a little bit different from other charities where the money isn't necessarily spent locally. Absolutely all of ours will be used to support local people in Enfield with a whole variety of kind of problems that they're facing.
Yeah, so we Sorry. So the shops is that potentially a sort of the start of a retail empire, or are we just we're just going to see how those two shops do for the moment? And
we're going to see how those shops do for the moment. We were very fortunate to get a little bit of funding from Martin Lewis towards the sort of capital cost of refurbishing the shops, and the second shop we got a grant from Comic Relief. That assisted us because it meant that it was relatively low risk for us to start that off, because the initial cost of, for example, buying a till, getting the signage up and things like that, we didn't have to find that money. So we really want to see how the shops are going to do and whether they are going to help us to generate some income to help the service. If they do, then yes, we might well consider a retail empire. We also, one of the things that we had to do as a result of the Martin Lewis donation was to produce a guide for other Citizens Advice on how to set up a shop. And some of what I've been doing over the last year is talking to other CEOs who are thinking about it and answering their questions and giving them some information about how it's worked for us. So you could see the start of a national retail empire from the small acorn in Enfield.
And from what I understand, one of the plans for the second shop, I think the first shop's a bit smaller, but the second shop, the plan is to have advice sessions from there eventually. Is that correct?
Yes, we are hoping to. We've got a little bit of work to do in the rear part of the shop involving improving disability access and so forth. But yes, eventually the plan is that we're hoping to have advice appointments there. One of the reasons for that is because obviously the main Citizens Advice service is located in Ponders End, which is quite a distance away for people who live in Bowes Park and Palmer's Green area. So it can be hard to travel over there. And also, unfortunately, the Citizens Advice main office in Ponders End is absolutely full of advisors and clients. So we need to diversify our premises in order to be able to see more people, because the demand is huge at the moment.
Yeah. So moving on to talk about that. So from my understanding, we've got the sort of head office is Vincent House. That's in Ponders End on the corner of Hertford Road and is it Southbury still, or is it going to Nags Head Road there? Right. Yeah. And then you do various drop-ins around the borough.
Yes.
Is that correct? So those are staffed by advisors. And are those open to anybody to go in, or does it depend on the?
It would depend on the particular drop-in. So, for example, in partnership with the Over 50s Forum, we do an Over 50s drop-in at the Dugdale Centre on a Monday morning. So anyone over 50 is very welcome to come along to that. Others of our services are for specific client groups. So we have a service for people who are affected by HIV and AIDS, for example, where people who are affected can call in to see an advisor in the HIV clinic in the North Middlesex Hospital. Obviously that is only open to patients. Then we do some outreaches at children's centres across the borough, and that's for parents with children under 5, and anyone can phone a children's centre and book an appointment to see an advisor. And then we do drop-in sessions and telephone and email advice from our main office in Vincent House. We've also got a very small home visiting project for anyone who can't get into the bureau. So for somebody who's got a severe disability or who's very unwell, we can come out and see you at home if you can't get in to see us.
Okay, so and these services are provided. So as Andy said, you've got a mix of paid staff and volunteers. Is that right? Correct?
Yes.
So in terms of volunteers, what sort of roles do they do? Because we talk about volunteering quite a lot on Enfield Voices, and obviously we try and recognise the contribution that volunteers make to various organisations around the borough.
Yeah, absolutely. We couldn't run our service without volunteers. That's absolutely true. At the moment, we've got 61 volunteers plus our trustee board who are also volunteers. There's another 14 of those. So 75 people volunteer with us in some way or another. Most of them will be either training as advisors or what we call gateway assessors. Gateway assessors are first people that you will see as you come into the bureau or as you telephone the bureau. And their job is to really work out what the problem is and how we can best get it resolved for you. So, for example, will you need to see a debt advisor on an appointment basis? Do we need to book you in with one of the local solicitors firms that do pro bono advice? Or can we help you by printing you off a standard letter that you can use to submit your benefit appeal, for example? So the gateway assessor is the first role that you'll see in the bureau, and the training for that will probably take about 6 months. We normally say 1 to 2 days a week. 1 day a week is fine if you want to do gateway over the telephone, because that's relatively straightforward to train for. 2 days a week if you want to do face-to-face gateway. And many people will then move on to train to give full advice after gateway training. And that will take about probably a year and a half to train on 2 days a week, because we are teaching you every aspect of UK social welfare law. So you learn social security law, debt law, housing law, basic immigration law, consumer rights, as well as the sort of softer skills on how to interview clients. And that's a qualification that if somebody's looking for work, it would enable them to work in any CAB in the country. There are other roles in the service as well, though, if people don't have the time to give to training as an advisor, which is a pretty big commitment.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of people who help out with administration and reception duties. Sometimes they come in just for 2 or 3 hours a week to do a particular administrative role or to do a morning on our reception desk. We also always have a desperate need for people to volunteer to help support our IT, because all of our IT support staff are volunteers. So I know that our lead IT volunteer, Rudolph, will not thank me if I don't say that if you're sitting at home and you're an IT person who's got a little bit of time to give, we would really welcome you. None of us are that good at IT as advisors. I have to say it's not our strength, so we're constantly pressing the wrong button and making bad things happen on the computer. So a lot of it is just you coming and making sure we can reset the screen to how it should look. Then there's also shop volunteering roles, of course. So if people just want to do a half day helping us to maybe sort the donations or to staff the till, that's also really needed at the moment. So it's pretty much no role that we couldn't find you if you have some time to offer us.
Oh, that's lovely, because obviously we I think, again, I think people think that if you volunteer for the CAB, then it's quite, obviously the advisor stuff is quite a big commitment by the sounds of it. But that then if it's either that or nothing, which obviously doesn't sound like that at all. If people are interested in applying for a volunteer role, how would they do that? They go direct to CAB?
To our website, yes. So the main organisational website, citizensadvice.org.uk, will show you which bureaus are recruiting for trainee advisors around the country. But our own website, citizensadviceenfield.org.uk, will give you links for local volunteering opportunities. There is a short form to fill out. Don't let that put you off. If you're interested in volunteering in one of our shops, just pop your head in the door, really, and say hi to one of the staff there, and they'll talk you through it and see how you can help out there.
Excellent. Okay, so talking more now about clients, and I suppose that's so you've got so what does the client's I suppose process or journey through the through their advice journey? I hate that word journey, but I can't stop saying it now. What does that look like? So somebody has a problem with whatever it might be. What do they do?
Okay.
What happens?
So there are 3 main ways that people would contact us. They'd either come into one of our drop-in sessions at Vincent House, which are on Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Fridays, and I'm afraid there is a bit of a queue, a very large queue usually to see somebody, but eventually they would come through and see one of our gateway assessors who would work out what the issue is, make sure it's something that we can help with. It normally is, but they would have to assess that and see how best to help. And then we would normally, if it was a complicated problem, like for example multiple debts, or somebody who needs to make an appeal to get a particular benefit paid to them, we'd normally book them an appointment either with a volunteer advisor or with a paid specialist advisor, depending on what was needed. They can also telephone us on Mondays and Thursdays. We offer a phone service all day, and you can also email inquiries via our website, which is probably the easiest way to get in touch with us. If your inquiry isn't urgent, if it's an emergency, obviously come to the drop-in and queue up. But if it isn't an emergency and just want a bit of advice on something, that would be the easiest way to get in touch with us.
And is there such a thing as a typical client? You know, are some issues more common than others? Or
yes, in Enfield, benefits are the most common inquiry that we get. So in the last year, we've had just over 3,000 clients with benefit and universal credit problems. So that clearly is by far and away the most common thing that people would come in about. And typically that would be, let's say they've been assessed as fit for work when they don't feel that they are. They want help claiming disability benefits when they perhaps newly had a stroke, or mum's newly been diagnosed with dementia. After that, it's housing problems, 1,500 of those in the last year, and that's a very London specific thing. Most citizens advice across the country, the second most common inquiry would be debt, but almost all the London bureaus, the second most common inquiry is housing, and that's because of particular housing pressures in the capital, of course, which perhaps aren't so bad in other areas. But certainly we see about just under 1,500 people with multiple debt problems as well. And very often people will take out loans, overdrafts, credit cards when things are good, and then perhaps over time dries up, or they lose their job to redundancy, and what was perfectly manageable becomes absolutely unmanageable and a complete crisis. So often we'll see, the first time we'll see people, they'll come into our drop-in and perhaps they've got bailiffs come into the door, or they've got an eviction notice from court, and you know it's very much a crisis, and trying to help them to kind of hang on to their home, or to prevent their goods being seized. With benefits, and particularly with universal credit, where there is a waiting period before you can actually receive the benefit, a lot of it is around trying to get people advance payments of benefits to keep them going until their benefit is sorted out regularly, and helping with appeals. But it could be absolutely anything. I mean, one of the joys of working or volunteering in a Citizens Advice Bureau is that you absolutely never know what's going to come through the door. We had an inquiry about how long you can store eggs, for example, for in vitro fertilisation. You know, so it could be absolutely anything, and that's the real pleasure of it. I can remember when I was at Harrow walking past an interview room door, and a gentleman was getting a very large chainsaw out of a box, and I was slightly concerned, so I hovered outside the interview room door, and I could hear our advisor saying, "I see what you mean, it doesn't look like it does on the box, does it?" So, you really, really don't know what's going to come through the door. So that's a great pleasure of it. But yeah, if there is a typical client, it would be about benefits, housing or debt.
Yeah, and so all the advice and all the advice is absolutely free to the person who's asking for that advice. There's no charge, even if you have to find them sort of, I suppose, specialist legal advice. You've got solicitors that offer that.
We've got local firms that come in and give an initial short interview free of charge. It's really a diagnostic interview, if you like, to see whether you have a case and whether it's something that's worth pursuing. And those appointments are available in employment law, housing law, immigration, family law and general law. So yeah, everything that's provided for in the CAB is free of charge. The only thing you'll ever have to pay for is if you want to buy something in one of our shops.
Yes, and obviously we should all do that.
Absolutely.
Fantastic, thank you. So how do you think the service has changed, or has it changed since you became involved all those years ago, or even just since you've become CEO?
It certainly has changed since I was an advisor. Bear in mind that was in the late 80s when I was much younger and
Surely not.
less wrinkly than I am now. But I think the problems have become much more serious and urgent. Certainly when I trained as an advisor, people would come in about all sorts of consumer things. So I can remember, for example, helping somebody make a complaint about some curtains that she'd had made that were the wrong size for her windows. I can remember helping somebody to consider a complaint about a health farm because she hadn't lost weight when she'd been to stay there. None of that would really come in very often anymore. And I think that's because the system has got much more complicated, and there are built-in periods when people really have no money at all left, and that really wouldn't have happened. When I trained 30 odd years ago, if somebody had been left entirely without money, it would have been because a mistake had been made. So we could phone what was then the DHSS and get it sorted out, and it would inevitably be a mistake, and you could arrange a payment for them immediately. These days, there's a period of destitution, if you like, absolutely built into the system, so that you can't get any money for the first few weeks unless you apply for an advance payment. So a lot of the people that we see are in much more desperate need now than they would have been a few years ago. Obviously, we all know as well that there are increasing pressures on council housing, for example. So a few years ago, it probably would have been worth your while going on the council house waiting list, whereas these days, the chance of you ever getting to the top of it are very minimal, because there are so many people who are homeless and in absolutely desperate need. You know, Enfield has got the second highest number of families in temporary accommodation in the whole of the UK, and it's got the highest number of evictions from private rent in the whole of the UK. So there is a very, very serious housing problem here, and you know, we just wouldn't really get people coming in just saying, well, I'd quite like a council house, please, can you help me to apply to go on the register, because in practice they wouldn't get anywhere by doing that. So it's really a very different world than it was a few years ago.
Okay. And in terms of, I suppose there's been some developments on the positive side as well in terms of innovations that mean that it's easier for people to access advice. Not all of it, I suppose, the advice we'd want people to access. You know, there's lots of scams and things out there. But on the other hand, there's also, I know that there's sort of, we've talked about web chat before, the email that you mentioned. So particularly if people have, it's not quite so urgent, but they still would like some advice. I suppose there's different routes as well.
Yeah. The Citizens Advice main website, citizensadvice.org.uk, is an absolutely brilliant resource if you just want to know what your rights are about a particular aspect of law. It covers absolutely everything. So, for example, on Boxing Day, the most frequent search on our Citizens Advice website is unfortunately how to get a divorce. Having spent Christmas with your loved ones, it appears that by Boxing Day you really want to know how to get a divorce.
I thought it was going to be, how do I return this chainsaw?
No, I'm afraid not. It's definitely, please tell me how I can get away from this. So, you know, you can literally look up pretty much anything on our website and get some information about what your rights are and how to do things. There are standard letters to download and so forth. So it's a really good resource. And certainly when I trained as an advisor, it was in the pre-internet days. So in practice, the only way to find out your rights was maybe to go to the library and get a book out about, you know, what consumer law was, or come to the Citizens Advice Bureau. So these days, most of the basic information is available online. And there are some really good websites. The .gov.uk website is a really good resource for finding out how to do things, and obviously the council's own website for local issues in Enfield. And we're really here for people who would struggle to enforce their rights without somebody kind of helping and assisting them.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so we're almost out of time. Do you just want to just remind us how, if we wanted to support Citizens Advice Enfield, which personally I think we all should, but I'm quite biased. How can we do that? What's some simple ways? Did you mention the shop and donating items to the shop? You mentioned
absolutely. So I mean, I suppose the three main ways would be through the easiest way would be to donate goods for sale in one of our 2 charity shops. The second easiest way would be to volunteer some of your time, and we would welcome you in a variety of roles, and do get in touch if you'd like to work with us. The more difficult way is, of course, that if you happen to have some spare money, we would very much welcome a cash donation or a cheque donation, or you can donate through our website, citizensadvice.org.uk. And you can gift aid. You can add gift aid to your donation there as well. So there are plenty of ways to support us. But yes, I suppose the very easiest way, which I didn't mention, is go in and buy something from one of our charity shops. We have some lovely things in there at reasonable prices. So enjoy the shopping experience and know you're doing some local good at the same time.
Something for everybody, I think.
Absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. And I know that there are also some other innovative ways, just very quickly. So for example, if you shop through Amazon, set up as a charitable giver there, and I think is it easy fundraising is the other one. Yeah.
So I must say I'm a very keen internet shopper, and if you register through Easy Fundraising, each time you buy something online, we will get a small donation from a whole variety of retailers, and I've managed to raise us over £100 in the last couple of years just through my own internet shopping efforts, and you can do that from the comfort of your own sofa. If you're a little more active, there's an app you can download on your phone called Fit for Change, and that will make a donation per mile you walk or run. So you can raise money while you're even walking the dog around the park.
That's great. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Jill, and I hope that our viewers found it interesting, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Julie. Bye.